you. I look forward to being here.
Thank you, Kevin. And finally,
People in the Central Valley. I guess I am not particularly surprised by that
decision, but I am disappointed by it. Let me begin by recognizing Mr. Tom Birmingham, the General Manager of the Wetlands Water District, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin, about Weston's Water District and the plight that has been suffered by the people who farm, work, and live in that region. But let me say that Weston's Water District has been identified as ground zero of the water supply crisis that we have been suffering over the course of the last 20 years. It's been suggested over the last 3 years that the water supply shortages in the state of California are a result of drought. And in fact, the period from 2007 to 2009 was a dry period compared to the record of hydrology in the state of California. But it should now have become evident to everyone that the water supply for the west side of the San Joaquin Valley has nothing to do with hydrology. Over the course of the last several weeks, we've experienced significant precipitation, both in the form of snowfall and rainfall, in the watershed that serves the west side of the San Joaquin Valley. Today, the snowpack in that watershed is 117% of the long-term average for this time of the year. And we have a project that was identified as the Two Gates Project. The biological opinion for the protection of smelt is based upon some assumptions concerning how turbidity affects the distribution of smelt in the Delta. We developed, along with a number of other agencies, an experiment to determine whether the operation of two gates in the western part of the Delta could influence turbidity in the Delta and thus prevent smelt from moving into the vicinity of the pumping plants. Just in December, we were told that experiment could not go forward because the scientific underpinnings of the experiment, how turbidity affects smelt, are uncertain. That suggests that the limitations contained in the biological opinion are based upon science that is uncertain. Now, Mr. Bishop asked our impression of the Endangered Species Act. The Endangered Species Act is not a bad law, but like every law, how it is administered or implemented determines the benefits or the detriments associated with the law. And in our circumstances, the Fish and Wildlife Service has consistently ignored the requirements of the Endangered Species Act, particularly the requirement that its decisions be based on the best scientific and commercial data available. And until Congress acts, we will continue to suffer the hardship that you're going to hear about today.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to recognize Mr. Piedad Ayala to testify.
Thank you, Tom. Some few questions there. We get them blamed for something that we don't do. We get them blamed for the pumps killing the fish when the reality is totally different. What is killing the fish is those 389 million gallons that dump it into the Delta, and they going by and checking the biological opinions and blaming the farming industry or our valley for that. When we go and look Delta, we go and see how big the Delta is, and the little spot where the pumps are pumping, and we get them blamed for that. When we go and see something, what happened in Haiti, that was a natural disaster. What happened here is created by our own representatives. Representatives, one day we elect representatives that should be working for us, working with us, or fighting for us, or defending us on the situations like what we're going through. When we go to the west side, when we go and talk to farmers, farm workers, and business people, that's a totally disaster. Because some of these farmers, they've been in business for second and third generations. When we got farm workers, they've been in the same farm for 10, 30, 20, even 40 years, and they end up without a job. They end up in the street. Because basically one day they came and told them they didn't have a house no more, they didn't have a job no more, and then they have to move to some other areas. They never think they're going to be going through this in their life. Some of these employers, when they go and see the farm workers, or some of us, when we go see our farm workers and we tell them there's nothing there. When we see some of the farm workers in the food lines, farm workers that we used to see picking cantaloupes, harvesting. I know. Rob said he doesn't like cantaloupes.
I'll take his.
But But when we see our people working hard, people that really got pride, people that really work, they sweat out there, putting the food on the table for you, for me, for everybody in this country, and all of a sudden we have to see these people in the food lines. And it's pretty embarrassing to see that some of those people, when they're going to receive those food cans, so that food is coming from China, that's like a slap in the face. That, for our government, we always got all the respect. Our communities, we concentrate and work and produce. And fortunately, in the last 3 years, we've been really studying why we get them blamed for something, because they're blaming the pumps, and they say that that's what is killing the Delta smelt. I think the reality is a lot bigger than that. We don't do anything but work. This is so simple. Our government should be looking out for us, and it's so simple, it's not going to cost a penny for them to turn the pumps on and work in the real. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to go to Chris Acree with Revive the San Joaquin.
Revive's a local group, a local community-based nonprofit working for restoration of the San Joaquin River and stewardship of its resources. The benefits of San Joaquin River restoration in our area have not yet been realized, and I believe this is important because while the program participants are primarily focused on quantifying the losses to the Frank contractors, there are huge benefits from restoration locally that go unrecognized. Defining our needs as a valley and being able to quantify the benefits of new programs and infrastructure is the first step to creating a more sustainable economy here and to identifying what actions need to be undertaken to fix these problems. The Delta is, as we've talked about, is central to our problem here in the valley, and I request that the federal legislature not rush to pass bills that weaken the Endangered Species Act or enable more south of Delta transfers without ensuring that these measures are compatible with Delta sustainability planning efforts going on at the state. The water legislation recently passed by the Senate Water Committee is unnecessary. It creates a dangerous layer and confusing layer of government that is counterproductive to the Delta efforts going on at the state. We know we have taken too much water from the South Delta, and legislation used as a Hail Mary pass for the last drop of that fresh water in the Delta, especially in drought years, is very damaging. It's well established that pumping levels through the South Delta have increased this last decade to unsustainable levels, and that our only solution left here is either to reduce exports or deliver more fresh water to the Delta. When we talk about the need for new water supplies to be developed with new bonds and legislation, this fact often gets lost and leaves new developable supplies up for grabs to the highest bidder, and it may provide no benefits in this region that we need to focus on, which is the South Delta. Restoration of the San Joaquin River gets a real bad rap in the San Joaquin Valley as we talk about losses of 15% to Frank contractors. But the reality of that is that those losses are less in drought years, these years that we need to focus more on, and that this doesn't look into all the options of recirculation that are inherent in the restoration program. When we talk about restoration flows being released from the dam, it's actually creating more storage in the dam, and there's benefits locally to groundwater supplies, which our cities need. There's benefits to local water districts downstream of Friant, and there's also benefits as this water is delivered directly to the South Delta, where we need it most to turn those pumps back on. As water runs downriver, it can release the burden on these other water districts, which can create new water. It creates storage behind Friant Dam, which can create new water, but we haven't yet grasped these new water supplies that are being created. So when we look at options with these new bonds, we look at infrastructure proposals like Temperance Flat Dam. We're learning more and more that these new water supplies created by these dams are not sustainable. They're getting smaller as we look at calculating restoration supplies into those estimates. We haven't looked at the local impacts of mining the material that would take to build that dam. That could reduce our efforts for restoration. And we haven't looked at the offsets of the clean hydropower that would be lost from those storage options. So what I'd like to just start by saying here is that we need to develop local infrastructure here that has local benefits and that's consistent with South Delta water quality protection, because without protecting the water quality in the South Delta, we really don't have any hope for keeping those pumps on in the west side. So,
Thank you very much. Now, like
Valley. For a long time, we've been somewhat unaffected by what's been happening in the Delta, but as noted by Mr. Nunes, this has been a challenge that's been developing over the last couple of decades. And now the crisis that is affecting Ground Zero, as Mr. Birmingham stated, is migrating over to the east side. And a lot of folks wonder how that is. Well, we have 884,000 acre-feet of historical water rights holders that need to be delivered from Northern California to the San Joaquin Valley in order for us to get our water supplies out of Millerton Lake. And last year was the first year in 50 years plus years of the project that those supplies were in jeopardy. And